Imagine this. You're scrolling through old luxury car ads and suddenly three Mercedes legends pop up. First, a massive 90s S-Class that once carried presidents and business tycoons. Then, a classic Roadster from the 70s that still turns heads with the top down. And finally, a rock-solid E-Class that became famous for crossing 500,000 kilometers without breaking a sweat. These aren't just cars, they're symbols of an era when Mercedes built machines to outlast time itself. In today's video, we're diving into the W140 S-Class, the SL R107, and the legendary W124 E-Class, three timeless Mercedes models that proved luxury and reliability can go hand in hand. And trust me, by the end, you'll see why these cars aren't just classics, they're living legends. Mercedes-Benz W140 S-Class, 1991 to 1998. Picture this. It's the early 1990s. The Berlin Wall has just fallen, the world is changing fast, and Mercedes-Benz decides to build a car that would not just compete but dominate the luxury segment for decades. The result? The legendary W140 S-Class, a machine so over-engineered that it quickly became known as the last true Mercedes. Now, most luxury cars from the 90s have faded into obscurity. They're unreliable, expensive to maintain, and you wouldn't want to be seen in them today. But the W140, it still commands respect wherever it goes. This wasn't just a car, it was a rolling symbol of power and prestige. Heads of state, billionaires, celebrities. Everyone wanted one. And even today, 30 years later, these machines are still running strong. Let's talk about why the W140 became such a legend. First, the design. When it launched in 1991, it was massive, wide, tall, and unapologetically bold. Some critics called it too big at the time, but that size was exactly what gave it presence. You didn't just drive a W140, you arrived in it. Those double-pane windows, the soft-closed doors, the hydraulic trunk lid, details that most modern luxury cars still try to copy. But the magic wasn't just in its features, it was under the hood. The W140 came with a range of engines, but the ones that truly made history were the V8s and the legendary V12. The 500 SEL, with its 5.0-liter V8, produced around 322 horsepower and 470 newton-meters of torque, enough to move this heavyweight with surprising grace. But the real king was the 600 SEL, powered by a 6.0-liter V12 engine delivering 402 horsepower and 580 newton-meters of torque. This was Mercedes saying, we can build the smoothest, most powerful luxury car in the world. And they weren't wrong. Now here's where it gets interesting. Despite its size and complexity, the W140 was engineered to last. This car was designed at a time when Mercedes didn't care about cutting costs. They wanted perfection. The suspension was built to handle brutal European roads. The body panels were so solid that closing the doors sounded like a bank vault, and the drivetrain was tested for hundreds of thousands of kilometers before release. Owners often report these cars going 500,000 kilometers or more with regular maintenance. There are even stories of W140s in Eastern Europe still being used as daily drivers with close to 1 million kilometers on the clock. Try finding another luxury car from the 90s that can do that. Of course, maintaining a W140 isn't exactly like maintaining a Toyota Corolla. Parts are expensive, and that V12 under the hood can make even seasoned mechanics sweat. But here's the thing. If you find a well-kept example, especially one of the V8 models, it can be surprisingly reliable. The engines are strong, the transmissions are durable, and the build quality is unmatched. What really makes the W140 stand out, though, is the experience. Sit inside one and you immediately feel transported to a different era. The leather is thick, the wood trim is real, and the driving position makes you feel like royalty. That double glass insulation keeps the cabin so quiet that even at high speeds you can have a calm conversation without raising your voice. This was luxury defined by engineering, not just by marketing. And let's not forget the reputation. This car wasn't just popular among enthusiasts. It was the choice of presidents and world leaders. If you've ever seen old news footage of motorcades in the 90s, chances are you've spotted a W140 leading the way. That kind of image doesn't fade. It's why even today, when a W140 shows up on the road, people still take notice. So what makes the W140 a legend? It's simple. It was built without compromise. In an era before cost-cutting and planned obsolescence, Mercedes threw everything they had into creating the ultimate luxury car. The result was a vehicle so durable, so powerful, and so iconic that decades later, it still has a cult following around the world. If you ever get the chance to own one, especially the 500 SEL or the 600 SEL, you're not just buying a car, you're buying a piece of history, a reminder of a time when Mercedes-Benz built cars to last forever. Mercedes-Benz SL R107, 1971 to 1989. When you think of the word timeless, very few cars come close to the Mercedes-Benz SL R107. Produced from 1971 all the way until 1989, this was one of the longest-running models in Mercedes history. And there's a reason for that. People simply couldn't get enough of it. The R107 wasn't just a car, it was a cultural icon. Hollywood stars drove it, business tycoons owned it, and it became the symbol of success and style during the 70s and 80s. Even today, when you see one on the road, it doesn't look outdated. It looks classic. That's the magic of the R107. Let's start with the design. The R107 had sharp, elegant lines, a long hood, and a low stance that gave it a sporty yet refined presence. Unlike many other cars from the 70s, it never looked awkward or overdone. It was clean, balanced, and perfectly proportioned. That's why after almost 20 years of production, it still looked fresh. But the beauty wasn't just skin deep. The R107 was available with a range of inline 6 and V8 engines. And these weren't ordinary engines. They were built with the same Mercedes philosophy of durability first, performance second. The most popular models were the 450 SL and the later 560 SL, both powered by smooth and reliable V8s. The 560 SL in particular became a legend in markets like the United States, where it combined effortless power with a level of refinement very few roadsters could match. One of the biggest reasons for the R107's success was its build quality. This was a car you could drive every day, not just on weekends. It wasn't fragile like many sports cars of its era. The doors closed with that famous Mercedes thunk. The interior was made of materials that still look good decades later, and the engines were known to last well over 300,000 kilometers with proper care. And let's talk about safety, because the R107 was groundbreaking in this area. Mercedes engineers equipped it with features like a strengthened passenger cell, crumple zones, and advanced crash protection. Technology that was way ahead of its time. Driving an SL wasn't just stylish, it was also one of the safest choices you could make back in the 70s and 80s. The R107 also had versatility. It came with both a removable hardtop and a soft-top roof, giving owners the best of both worlds. On a sunny day, you could enjoy the open-air freedom of a roadster, and in winter, you could put on the hardtop for the comfort and security of a coupe. Few cars offered this kind of flexibility with so much elegance. What really made the R107 stand out, though, was how it made you feel behind the wheel. This wasn't a hardcore sports car that demanded your full attention. Instead, it was about effortless cruising, smooth steering, a comfortable ride, and that signature Mercedes refinement. It was the kind of car you could drive across the country and arrive without feeling tired. Collectors today love the R107 for exactly these reasons. It's not just a car, it's a statement. It represents an era when Mercedes built vehicles that combined style, durability, and everyday usability in a way no other brand could. Even after nearly 50 years, well-maintained R107s are still being driven daily, proving that the engineering and craftsmanship were second to none. And the best part? Unlike many other classics, the R107 has aged gracefully. It's not just an old car, it's a classic that still turns heads. So why is the R107 legendary? Because it defined what a luxury roadster should be: stylish, reliable, safe, and timeless. For 18 years, Mercedes kept building it because people simply didn't want anything else. And even now, decades later, it remains one of the most beloved Mercedes models ever made. If you're lucky enough to find a good one today, you're not just buying a convertible, you're buying a piece of automotive history that will always have a place in the hearts of car enthusiasts. Mercedes-Benz W124 E-Class, 1984 to 1996. Now let's talk about a Mercedes that many people call the most reliable car ever built. The Mercedes-Benz W124 E-Class. If the W140 was about excess and the SL R107 was about style, the W124 was all about engineering perfection. This car wasn't designed to just last a decade, it was designed to outlive its owners. And for many people around the world, it actually did. The W124 debuted in 1984, replacing the W123, another Mercedes legend. But instead of just being an upgrade, the W124 represented a new era of precision engineering. This wasn't a car made to meet budgets or cut corners. It was designed during a time when Mercedes engineers had almost unlimited freedom, and the results speak for themselves. Even today, nearly 30 or 40 years later, you can find W124s with 500,000 kilometers on the odometer still running strong. Under the hood, the W124 offered a wide range of engines, from small 2.0-liter four-cylinders to powerful straight sixes and even V8s in later models. But ask any Mercedes enthusiast and they'll tell you, the legendary OM603 and OM606 diesel engines are the real heroes here. These inline-six diesels were so tough and reliable that they became favorites among taxi drivers across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. It wasn't unusual to see a W124 taxi racking up more than 1 million kilometers without a major rebuild. That kind of durability is practically unheard of today. For those who preferred petrol, the M103 and M104 straight-six engines were the sweet spot. Smooth, powerful, and nearly unbreakable when maintained properly. The later 500e, co-developed with Porsche, took things to another level. It packed a 5.0-liter V8 producing 322 horsepower, turning this practical sedan into a discreet Autobahn missile. The fact that Mercedes could build a car that doubled as both a family hauler and a performance monster shows just how versatile the W124 really was. But what really made the W124 a legend wasn't just the engines. It was the way this car was built. The doors shut with a satisfying thunk that owners still talk about today. The paint quality was so good that many original W124s still shine decades later. The suspension was engineered to balance comfort with rock-solid stability, making it equally at home on rough city roads or at 200 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn. And inside, everything was built with a seriousness that modern cars just don't have. The switches, the seats, the wood trim. Nothing felt cheap and nothing wore out quickly. Then there's the safety. The W124 was one of the first cars in the world to feature a driver's airbag and seatbelt pretensioners. It also introduced crumple zones and advanced structural engineering that made it far safer than most of its contemporaries. Mercedes wasn't just building a car. They were building a benchmark for the entire industry. So how far could a W124 really go? Well, stories of these cars surpassing 500,000 kilometers are common. Some have crossed the million-kilometer mark. And the best part? They could do it without bankrupting their owners. Basic maintenance, oil changes, filters, and suspension components kept them going strong. Unlike many luxury cars, you didn't need a fortune to keep a W124 on the road. That's why so many are still running today in every corner of the world. The W124 also came in multiple body styles: sedan, coupe, convertible, and wagon. Each had its own loyal fan base. The wagon, for example, became legendary among families and still has a cult following today. The convertible, on the other hand, is now a collector's item, offering that same rock-solid engineering in a stylish open-top package. But perhaps the most impressive thing about the W124 is the reputation it created. For many people, this was the car that defined Mercedes-Benz. Solid, reliable, luxurious without being flashy, and built to a standard that simply doesn't exist anymore. It's no wonder that even today, car enthusiasts consider the W124 to be the ultimate symbol of Mercedes engineering. And that's why the W124 earns its spot on this list. It wasn't the flashiest, it wasn't the most expensive, but it was the car that truly lived up to the Mercedes promise, engineered like no other car in the world. 3 decades later, it's still proving that point, 1 kilometer at a time.